know, the more I watch the squirrels in my yard, the more fascinated I am with their behavior, with their movements, with their cleverness, with their athletic ability. Just watching a squirrel on the ground and how it moves and how it mostly hops as it goes from one place to the other is pretty fascinating. Let's take a look. As I watch this squirrel hop through the grass, his hops look so big. They look like they're twice as big as his body length. The average body length of a gray squirrel is between 10 and 12 inches. Of course, the tail makes him look bigger. The tail could be 7 to 9 inches long. So what I decided to do was to try to really take a good video and then measure the distance of these hops. So if you take a look at the next video, you'll see a hop from a standing start that is more than 2 feet. And then he'll hop a couple more times, and then the last hop is like 2.5 feet. It's his biggest hop. And you can really see it better if you slow down the video and just kind of move the cursor of the video and watch him leap, because he makes these tremendous leaps. Look at the next video. Okay, so these leaps that I measured were 2.5 feet, which is more than twice the body length of the squirrel. And he's not even running away. He's not even trying. So I did a little research to find out what was the leaps that they're capable of. And I found out that squirrels can leap up to 6 feet across the ground. They can jump between buildings or tree limbs 9 feet across. So these guys are really athletic. And for their body size, if I had their ability, I could jump up onto the roof of my house and jump over a bus. It's amazing. These are amazing athletes. And not only are they strong and fast and can leap, but they're very agile. And they can climb up my bird feeders and get to my bird feeders even though the pole is less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter. Look at these pictures. Okay, so I know the squirrels love my birdseed, but they're supposed to like tree nuts. They're supposed to be nut gatherers and gather acorns and walnuts and other kinds of tree nuts. And whatever they don't eat right away, they bury and save for a later time. I was wondering if they had a preference for nuts. And I happen to have a bunch of different kinds of nuts in my house, so I put them out on plates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with pecans, almonds, walnuts, peanuts, and cashews to see if they had a preference of what nut they liked better. And let me show you what happened. Well, I guess I thought what was going to happen was the squirrel would come along and he would look at all of these nuts on all these different plates, and he would go and see what they all were, and then he would pick one. But that's never what happened. As you can see from the video, he went right to the first plate that he came to and he started eating those nuts. So I switched the nuts around. I put the plates out again. He came from the same side, ate the same plate. Stopped at the same place. So no matter how I switched the nuts around, it depended on where the squirrel came from first. If he came from the left, he ate the nuts from the plate on the left first. Didn't matter what they were. If he came from the other side, same thing. First plate he came to, that's where he would stop. That's where he would eat. He would eat all those nuts, and then he would go to the next plate. I did these taste trials many times, and I always switched the nuts, so there was a different nut on the end every time, but the, the result was always the same. The squirrel always went to the first plate and started eating it whatever side he came from. So what was happening was the squirrels were getting fat, and I was running out of nuts until this happened. So the scenario is that the squirrel comes in from the right, starts eating all the nuts on the plate that are on the right. Then he goes to the next plate and eats all of those nuts. Then he goes to the next plate, which is the middle plate, and starts eating those. All of a sudden, another squirrel comes up, chases him away, and the squirrel goes up to that middle plate, and he looks at it, sniffs it, but then he chooses the plate next to it on the other side and starts eating those. That happened to be pistachios. That middle plate was cashews. He prefers pistachios from cashews. So here is a squirrel with more discerning taste, different tastes. So I realized that squirrels are different. Of course they're not all the same. Of course they're not all going to do the same thing, and they're not all going to like the same thing. So I decided that I really got to take a closer look at these squirrels and see if I can tell them apart and see what else is different about them. After really taking a closer look at my squirrels, I have two very frequent visitors to my yard. And one of them is a very light gray color. The other one has a darker brown on his head, on his sides, and his tail is darker. Take another look and see if you can tell them apart. So I have two different squirrels that are in my yard every day, and I could tell them apart now. And I wanted to try to taste test one more time, but do it a little bit differently. I wanted to take all the nut samples I had, plus a sunflower seed, and put them on one plate, and see if I could tell if they had a preference with that in mind. So look at what happened. Well, I hope you're interested in squirrels, because the more I look at these squirrels, the more interested I become. I think what you should do is see how far you can jump from a standing start. Compare that with your height. Compare that with what squirrels are doing. Put some food out in the yard. See what food squirrels like. Take a close look at the squirrels and see if you can tell them apart. And join me next week when I try to test how they behave, because the one thing we haven't talked about is their intelligence. They're very smart and clever animals, and I'm going to test that next week.